Recording live from the E. Haley Memorial Studios, straight out of Almont, Ontario, it's time for This Death Clock Has 60 Minutes, your one and only weekly Warmahordes news broadcast. It's 8 p.m. Wednesday night, the beers are cold, the news is fresh, and the death clock starts now. Ladies and gentlemen, it is Wednesday night. And it's only taken us 10 minutes to get this thing running. It's time for the death clock. Before we get started this evening, I would like to introduce everybody who is joining us. Starting with, of course, me. I am the Myth Gorax, and I am the one that forces all these people to hang out on a Wednesday night instead of hanging out with their loved ones and talk about war dollies.
Loved ones, that would have been nice.
Sitting to my left is no other than my partner in crime, PG Semi-Automagic. Introduce yourself, sir.
I am PG Semi-Automagic. Oh. I am a Ottawa PG, and I tend to head up the Ottawa Gatineau War Machine Club.
On my other side is no other than Maelstrom,
yes,
who is in charge of making sure that you guys are kept entertained on the boards and make sure that the transitions happen sometimes.
Sorry about that.
And the recording happens when it's supposed to. All the things, you know...
That could happen.
Happen because of you. Really.
Sometimes, yeah.
It all really hinges on you.
Don't Maelstrom this up.
If you look down below us, in the corner if you're watching the video, is our friend Paul Campbell. Welcome to the podcast, Paul.
It's great to be here, guys.
Paul,
and don't let them fool you. They just randomly accosted me on the street and dragged me into this.
That's pretty much how this entire podcast works, Paul. There's no short of a lie on that one. Paul, tell us a bit about your history with War Machine and sort of why you're into it. What's up with you?
Well, I came into wargaming, as so many of us did, through Games Workshop. I played a whole bunch of 40K, and then when I moved to Ottawa, I found that the 40K people just weren't quite as, welcoming. And I ended up at FDB when they were starting a journeyman league, and I'd been taking a look at these neat little models of wooden golems. It ended up being the Circle Wolves, and I started out basically that day letting them convince me to buy into a battle box.
Sounds like kind of the story that we all have where George suckered us in.
Basically.
I think this probably wasn't my fault because I suspect this was in the basement FDB, not the new shiny FDB.
It wasn't the new shiny FDB, and it truly wasn't George's fault. This was. I'm going to lay this entirely on Theory's feet.
All right.
Good people. Made the first couple of years of me playing War Machine a little strange because I did it all in French. Because I'm on the Quebec side in the NCR for people that don't know.
All right, so tonight's topics, we're going to discuss a few different things. We'll go through the PP news, although it's a short list this week. But tonight's topic, when we get to it, is really going to be about the idea of the dojo. And the reason I brought Paul in is because Paul and I, since I met Paul, he is one of the people that I dojo with quite regularly. So if I've got, because he knows his Signar, he's a good person, especially when I was playing Signar a lot more, he's a great person for me to go, Paul, what do you think about this? The second topic we're going to discuss tonight, we're going to get into a bit about jack bonding, which is a weird, mysterious topic because it does not come up in competitive play as often as it should, but it does show up on the cards, oddly enough, which confuses people, particularly new players. So we're going to cover both topics. The jack bonding should be relatively short. The conversation about the conversation about the dojo may take us a little bit longer. Interestingly enough, when we get into the PP news, there's been some conversation brought about how to bring in new players into your meta and how to treat new players in your meta, and I'll discuss that a bit tonight too. So, guys, let's start with our PP news this week. I think the only thing of any true note is probably more in your wheelhouse, PG Semi-Automagic. What little gift of a picture showed up.
Well, yeah, I was graced on Facebook this morning by spotting from Beasts of War. Privateer Press had put out a bunch of shots of the plastic, or the injection molded plastic Prime Conflux and Prime Axiom kit. So this is the second dual kit we've seen. The first one was the Sepulchre Kraken kit for Crix. And now we're getting the Convergence version. So a lot of people are wondering what the heck's going on, because the faction that wasn't supposed to get anything new, really, is suddenly showing up as the second person to get the awesome kit.
Right.
Now, they were the recipients of the very first of the hard plastic kits.
Right.
So it really didn't surprise me that much. But this is the first time that I can remember seeing a completely finished kit, box art, all the sprues, and seeing everything before we see the rules.
Right. Well, and you were complaining a lot, because when the last book came out, all the new Gargantuans had been released, all the new Colossals had been released, and you were kind of a little butthurt. I mean...
Yeah. So a year ago at TempleCon, when TempleCon was in the winter, they announced all the new Colossals, and they showed them all off, and they showed off the new electrical-based Colossal for Convergence, along with all the other Colossals, like the Sepulchre and the Hypnos and all those guys.
Right.
Not Hypnos, sorry. I'm getting my things wrong.
Hyperion?
No, Hyperion's already out.
Okay.
It's the other one. Anyway, then at SmogCon, they announced all the Gargantuans, because they split it up that year, because they wanted to give UK the same kind of energy that we got from seeing all the Colossals. But this year, because they're doing their big keynote at Lock and Load, they just put out the Primecast. So everybody was kind of, they had sort of forgotten about it. But in between, the book was released.
Yeah.
And the book had every other Colossal in it.
And the COC players who have just been waiting for one little tidbit of something.
Yeah, we all understood that this was a limited faction, that we were not going to get new models. Nobody truly expected the book to come out and have a new caster in it, or a new unit, or anything like that. But because they had said, you are getting a new Colossal, and they had said, this is the book with all the Colossals in it, everybody was assuming, even if it wasn't in the book, in like a no quarter or something, it would actually, we get those rules. But it still hasn't happened.
I think the lesson in all of this is, you should just trust in PP.
Yeah.
Stop bitching. Just trust.
Shut your mouth and
just
wait a
trust.
while.
You'll get your shit.
Yeah.
Just relax, dude.
Yeah, you tell that all the Khador players waiting for that Grolar.
All right. Well, I think that was like some of our biggest news of the week.
Yeah. And that kit looks amazing.
They did hint at some Jack Marshall. Something that came out after SmogCon that we didn't talk about last week is they did hint at a Jack Marshall change.
Yeah.
I think I don't want to spend too much time on this, guys, because I'm sure we all have opinions on what that change should be, and we could probably blow an entire episode on the idea of what a Jack Marshall can do. So let's talk about. We'll go to you, Maelstrom.
Yes.
Jack Marshalls in the current iteration, they're kind of lackluster, right?
Okay.
You don't really understand this because
I have no
you
fucking
don't
clue.
play it at all. But that's why I'm going to you. I'm explaining this to you.
Yeah, no.
So you don't have
please,
Jack Marshalls, but
no.
you just get really cool figures that give you cool bonuses to your your stuff, right?
Yeah, I don't have to worry about any of that.
Well, in on the other side of
Yeah.
the coin, on the War Machine side, we have this thing called Jack Marshalls.
That sounds boring.
And Jack Marshalls would be really awesome.
Yeah.
Except Paul.
Except you completely confused Paul. He's busy. Leave him alone.
He's trimming his nails.
He didn't come on a podcast to give opinions or talk about things.
Paul, what?
I thought I was just an observer here.
What's the why are Jack Marshalls lackluster? And then we'll talk a bit about the hinted change.
So, the thing about it is you have to be very careful about which Jack Marshalls you're talking about, because some Jack Marshalls are actually quite good. You take something like Thor or the Arcane Tempest Gunmage Pistolier UA are very good Jack Marshals.
Yeah.
And the reason for that tends to come from the jacks that they're marshalling, but also about the abilities that they give them.
Mm-hmm.
Plain Jack Marshals tend to be terrible. You take somebody like Rudiger Shaw.
Yeah.
Rudiger Shaw he's a 2-point solo, doesn't really do much, and he gets to be a Jack Marshal, and his Jack Marshal is very lackluster, primarily because there's nothing that he really wants to take that he's going to give a good boost to. So, like a simple breakdown for a Jack Marshal is that a Jack Marshal lets you run a Jack, and it gives you essentially one pseudo focus that you get to use to either buy attacks, boost an attack, or boost damage. So, you want to be able to get a good use out of a Jack Marshal. You need to have a really focus efficient Jack. So if we take another really lackluster Jack Marshal like the Kovnek, the Kovnek Khador Jacks don't really tend to be focus efficient without good boosting spells, and all of Khador's good boosting spells tend to be battle group specific. So there's no real good place that you want to spend 3 points on a Jack Marshal to spend more points on a Jack that's going to get one focus.
Right.
He's never actually going to get anywhere, and he's not really the Jack is not really going to affect things.
Now, there is one good benefit to being a Jack Marshal, as we've discovered, is that if your Jack Marshal is killed, unlike having another Warcaster,
A junior.
taking control of it, which juniors are great, but if a junior dies suddenly, unlike in Hordes, your Jack just literally shuts down and stands there as a dead thing on the field until somebody can come over and kind of tap it back into the game. The cool thing about a Jack Marshal is then if the Jack Marshal dies, the Jack then becomes independent.
Yeah.
So you don't lose it. It becomes like a Horde's Beast, where it still gets to do its thing, it just doesn't get any boosts.
Now, the one thing that you haven't mentioned is that sometimes the Jack Marshals have a drive.
Yeah.
And
the drives are awesome.
Yeah.
Except, as we were discussing with Paul, that they're not always cost efficient to get said drive.
Yeah.
Now, that's what I want. Sorry, finish, Paul.
That's what I was saying, is that if you have a Jack Marshal that provides abilities, like, for example, Pronto. Pronto is an amazing ability. To be able to get an extra out of activation move is huge. Compare that to... That's a huge benefit to game.
Absolutely. So I think the idea of the Jack Marshal change that has been thrown out there, and sorry to try to interrupt, just trying to keep things moving along, but I'm going to throw this over to you, Semi-Auto Magic. The potential change is to make it so that the drives become something that a Jack Marshal can hand out to any Jack, as opposed to specifically the Jack that it is marshalling. Is that a good change or a bad change? Is that the way we wanted to see? Or is it maybe that they work more like, say, Strange Ways, where you can just throw an extra focus out there?
I like the idea of drives being something that they can do for any Jack. To go back to sort of the fluff bunny, the reason that you have marshals at all is that warjacks are kind of dog level intelligence. Warcasters can get the absolute most out of a Jack because they have bonded with that cortex and they're using magic to make that cortex better. A Jack Marshal is literally yelling at the Jack. Mm-hmm. And the idea of having Jack Marshals who have had experience in the field and they can yell at a Jack to tell it to do something specific. It always seemed kind of odd to me that they could only yell it at the one Jack that they were associated with, not just any Jack that they could, get within their command range or something like that. I would definitely say it probably needs to be a once per turn effect so that they can't do it to 12 Jacks. I think that would take it from like an interesting question to an auto include.
Thor is suddenly in everybody's list.
Yeah, exactly. But I think that having opening Pronto up so that it said once per turn you can do this thing, not this thing on your battle group. I like keeping the command check. I like all the other things. I think it would just be nice if You could. Oh, I hate saying it, but you could have a Haley 2 bonded Stormwall get pronto or something.
Sweet.
Not that you can move a Colossal outside of its normal activation, but replace Stormwall with Stormclad, and you've got almost as much of a problem.
Suddenly you'll have Jax actually getting used. And right now, other than a couple of rare exceptions like Thor in the ATGM, we're not seeing them being used. Okay, guys, moving on. The last bit of news was there was and I do want to talk about this very briefly. I'm only going to give this 7 minutes because at 8:30 we're changing topics, damn it. But so the Privateer Press puts out a little sort of write-up. The Insider every couple of weeks, and sometimes more than that. This particular Insider in our meta didn't cause any controversy. I think we all agreed with it that it was a good Insider. But basically, to get into it, it was Will Hungerford, I want to say. No, yes, Will Hungerford basically put out a request to the community at large. And I think that's how we need to look at it, is a request to the community at large that we need to be better with our new players about not telling them what to do. I do an entire podcast. I don't know about you guys, but I do this entire podcast where I tell other people what to do.
Literally tell people what to do.
Just to get it out of my system.
That's how you cure that
That's
demon?
how I cure that. That's how I can show up to games and kill Karchev and just be like, oh, dude, that was great. You did a great job with Karchev. Again. The 10th time. So the basic request was the community at large, the older Salt players, don't just walk up to the new Salt player and tell them what to do. I think that's kind of what it boiled down to. Help them, let them learn, let them discover the game on their own to a certain degree, and if they ask for help.
Yeah, I think the whole point of this is that occasionally you'll get players who will feel disheartened because the models that they pick, because they like the look of them, or because they fit in a theme force that they decided to pick, or something like that, people will say, oh my god, why did you pick that model? That's the worst model ever. And then it saps your will to come out to the game store. Because if you're coming out, you're a brand new player. This is your first, your second, your third time out of the game store.
And you probably picked it up because you love the look of a model.
Exactly. And you come to the store, and there are 20 people at the store. And they all know each other. Every single one of them seems to know every single other one. And they walk in, and the guys walk in, and it's like, hey, it's so-and-so. You want a game? Sure. Boom. They sit down, they start playing. And you're like, I've got my 10 points or my 25 points. And you have that innate, fear of just being out socially, because let's face it, if you're a nerd and playing war games, there's a good chance that you at least started out socially awkward, and some
of that might be that you tell people how to play their models.
Yeah, exactly. But if your experience when you finally do get a game is that people are making fun of the models you brought, or telling you, oh, those are horrible models, why the hell did you ever pick those models? That's really going to sap your will to even come back out.
We'll lose players. And the lifeblood of this community is the growth of new players. That's why we do our podcast, is we try to bring in new people. We're not just broadcasting to the old salts. We're here to help out new people so that they can be better players. You are the newest player here, Maelstrom.
Yeah, that all sounds very familiar.
We told you what to do right off the get-go.
No. Let's be honest here. What happened is we played some box games with him. He loved it. We got him into the game.
Yeah.
He immediately went out to the game store and picked a model that he loved
for the
look of.
What was the first model you bought?
I don't want to say it.
Say it. Come on.
It was an Archangel.
So, an absolutely gorgeous model.
Beautiful model.
What was the first thing I said?
You idiot.
So, that's an example of what not to do.
Don't do that.
However, I'm still here.
And now, do you wish that he had told you early on not to buy the Archangel?
Well, yeah, he should have told me early on not to buy it.
So, there's a fine balance. I think the fine balance is...
It looks great on the
oh my god, is that a gorgeous model?
You can be a special snowflake, and you might be the one that... But as the old Salt players... Well, let's just give the new player... Let the new player play his models. Let him learn the game the way that we learned it.
Do not do what semi-auto magic does.
So, Paul, I want to throw this out to you. When you're dealing with... it came from Eric, one of our listeners. Eric asked... What is the best way when somebody new comes to the table? How should you go about interacting with them? Is there a right way? Is there a wrong way? What are your suggestions for best interaction, so to speak?
Well, for best interactions, I'm big on. So these are I don't know.
I got nothing. Tell him to fucking not buy an Archangel.
The quintessential socially awkward geek. And now you guys are putting me on the spot. But
That's what we do.
signed up for this. But the thing that I keep coming back to is that while there's a power spectrum, and that some models are decidedly more powerful than others, that the breadth of that spectrum is not actually as large as most people think it is. And that the biggest difference between what's going to happen on the table actually comes down to skill. And so if someone comes up to me brand new and they have their Men of War shock troopers that they think are the most gorgeous models and they want to do stuff with them, and they ask me, how do I'm having trouble, how do I make this better? There are ways to do it. I've seen players that have an entire army of shock troopers, which are universally considered terrible models. They're very pretty. Give them the right tools, and they can do things. As long as you understand that they have these limitations that need to be gotten over.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head. One of the things that you can do is, instead of telling people why that their models suck, tell people ways, or if they ask you for advice, first wait for them to ask you for advice. The worst mistake we make as lovely we may be socially active nerds as opposed to the socially awkward nerds. We may be the ones that immediately offer advice when maybe it's not garnered,
not requested,
not
necessary,
not wanted,
not good,
hated. So our way of doing it, but I think you've hit the nail on the head. Instead of saying you shouldn't play that, maybe go deeper into your tank and come up with ways to help them make it better. I think that's a perfect suggestion, really. It's a much better way of dealing with it than, oh, dude, just don't use that. Because, shock troopers are really friggin' cool. And there are ways to make them work. It's the same thing with trenchers. Trenchers, which should be the foundation of any Cygnar army, it makes total sense. They look like World War II trench guys. They look super cool. There are ways to make them okay. Just bring siege and put them in thing.
Yeah, I think the thing that we all need to remember as more veteran players is that we are not playing the same game that someone who has been playing for 3 weeks is playing. We are playing generally a more competitive game. We are playing a game where we have sort of shaken out all the models and found the ones that we like. And you have to remember that these are people who are still at the whiz bang, oh wow, look at this game stage. And I love getting into that mindset where when I'm talking to them, I'm like, okay, what do you think is cool? And then what I'm doing is I ask them about it, and then I say, okay, well, if you really like those models, here are things that can go with it.
Right.
As opposed to saying, those are stupid models, pick other models. So if I have to have a last word on it, it is try and capture the childlike wonder of this being your first game. When someone comes up to you and says, I've only played like 3 games, the first thing you do is ask them, hey, do you want me to help you out with the early games, or do you just want to play it? And if they say you just want to play it, they are now playing the best list that they could ever play against.
Yeah, and we go back to all the other points that we've given over the years, or over the year. Remember to give yourself challenges so that game doesn't just become you ruffle stomping, face rolling the dude that you're playing. So make it give you, and don't tell them that you're doing it. Don't be like, I'm going to challenge myself that I can only win with a dude in your back line. No. But give yourself certain challenges. Play a fun list yourself. Play that list that you've never played. do it for fun. Don't criticize their list. Have a fun game, because when it comes down to it, that guy is going to come back because he had a great game with you and had a fun time.
Yeah.
And if we lose another player, then this game will die, and it'll just eventually be me and Semi playing in our basement, streaming games to nobody, and we don't want that.
Yeah, like that's what it was 6 months ago.
I know. And look what we've done.
Yes.
Okay, so we're gonna move right on to it's time for a little focus. So for tonight's focus, what I thought we'd talk about is a relatively complex thing that doesn't seem to come up as often as it should.
It's not that complex.
It's not complex, but
In fact, it's actually, I would say, one of the easiest things that nobody's ever actually looked at.
But the reason why it's in the back of the book, it's like one of the last things in the book.
Outside of the index,
I think it's in
I
an
believe
appendix,
it is
isn't it?
literally... Well, it's Appendix B.
Yeah.
After the timing routine of the turn order. So we're getting, like, deep in here. I think it's even after the painting section.
Oh, dude, it's
like
way...
it's really far back there. I think it's index and templates after it.
So, quiz question, what are we talking about? We're talking about bonding.
Yes.
All right, so bonding's weird, though, because it's a weird,
So
at the end
50
of
Shades of Warjack.
50 Shades of Warjacks, it only really comes up on cards with War Machine. It doesn't even come up on cards with hordes, because there's no
Well, that's not true. It does come up
But do warlocks
on hordes.
But do
only
warlocks natively
very,
have
very few instances. There's only about a half dozen hordes casters that have bonds.
Yeah.
And the bonds in hordes are less impactful than they are in War Machine.
Yeah. So, should we start with what bonds are?
What is Appendix B?
Appendix B is about bonds and bonding to your Warjack and or Warbeast. So, you have a Warcaster who has spent time in the field, usually with a specific Jack or a specific type of Jack, and they have really figured out how this Jack and or Jax works. So that basically opens up other powers. We're all nerds here. You hear in the Star Wars movies, you've got this droid, and they're acting all funny, so you have to take them and get them wiped.
Wipe the droid. Yeah.
Wipe the droid so that it doesn't have this weird quirk. Well, it's the same thing in the War Machine universe. So you have a Warjack who has been doing things with a caster for so long, they've developed a quirk. Sometimes the quirk is a good thing, sometimes the quirk is a bad thing. But generally, in the bonding rules, that's a good thing. So we're going to start off with generic bonding. So generic bonding during a campaign. So we're talking about...
a privateer press campaign, like a map campaign.
The map campaign or the
league.
story leagues or any of those. So during campaign play, where you're having the same casters and stuff moving through multiple games, you'll actually have a chance every turn that, or every game that a Warcaster can bond with a Jack. So these two models have been working so hard together, and as long as those two models haven't died at the end of the game, so your Warcaster hasn't been knocked out and your Jack hasn't been destroyed or removed from play, you get to roll a d6 to see if the Warjack has bonded to the Warcaster.
Right.
The nice thing is that for every game that those two stay alive, you get a +1 to that roll. So at the end of the first game, you're checking to see if it's bonded. On a 7 or higher, it will bond. So during the first game, if you roll a 6, it bonds. Second game, 5, and so on.
So this is a story fluff thing.
Yeah.
And it's in its basicness.
Yeah, exactly. So they've bonded together. You roll on some tables at the back of the book, and you get something awesome like it's gotten hyper aggressive and it chases after whatever shoots at it because I don't know, it was bonded to Kane or something, and it watches Kane shoot things that are far away, and it thinks, "Oh my God, I can do that!" and it just like runs after anything that tries to shoot at it.
Okay, so there's a couple other side benefits. If you were a Warcaster, you get to add an extra focus. You can allocate an extra focus to
That's
said
correct.
jack. And if you're a warlock, they now have +2
Yeah,
to their fury to their threshold, which is awesome, really. But I mean, it so rarely comes up that we don't think about it as a huge benefit. Some side notes. Not every work. So there are some casters that get bonds natively.
Well,
that's
no,
on their cards,
let's stop that. So during a league play, any warcaster can bond.
I think the confusion comes from.
The confusion comes from.
The confusion comes from. I show up to. So I played 10 games.
Mm-hmm.
My caster in this jack never died. I show up to the game store, and I put down said jack. My defender, let's just say, and I say, this jack has a bond with Kane 1. And my opponent goes, dude?
What is that? Yeah.
Yeah.
So you got to remember that this only works within your league.
Yes.
So if we skip to competitive play, we're going to take the Steamroller packet as an example, but it happens in Masters and everything else. Certain casters that are epic, or higher, so the second or third iteration of a caster, some of those have a bond listed on their card. If there's a bond listed on their card, that means that they can automatically be bonded at the beginning of any game. So, if you have, it says bond, and then the thing that you need to have on the table to bond with. So, for example, if it is, say Haley 2 is a good example. Haley 2 has a wonderful bond. So it says on Haley 2's card, Warjack bond, Haley. So that means Haley must be on the table for her to bond with a jack. Sometimes it will say Warjack bond, say Grolar or something. That would mean you could only bond with that particular jack. But Haley's she can bond with any jack. I think it says non-character.
Special note, yeah. I think in all bonds it says must be non-character.
Yeah, but it doesn't have to. It could say something else, but don't forget to read your cards. So in Haley's case, it's...
I think in the base bonding rules, though, it says you can't bond with a character.
That's correct. So it's she picks a non-character warjack. So because this is a bond, not because of anything it says on her card, and in fact it doesn't say it on the card, so it sometimes throws people, you can now allocate that an extra focus. And because she is bonded to it, the bonding benefit, I believe, on Haley is +2 speed?
Yes,
or
it is +2 speed. So, and the other thing about that is you can only bond to one jack. You don't get to just bond with all your jacks you get. What you get, you basically go, and you need to declare that at the beginning of the game.
Yes.
You say, just so you know, this one jack is my bonded jack. Generally, it's your Stormwall, but whatever.
Yeah, you guys can look that up on page 86, I want to say, in the main rule book, and then Appendix B has all the rest of the rules.
So, Paul, I want to throw this out to you. Off the top of your head, let's talk about a couple of the jack bonds. We'll round this up. I'm going to give it 2 more minutes, but some of the jack bonds and the ones that are awesome, so to speak, in the general cards. The ones that really stand out to you. Some of the casters that have bonds off the top. Other than Haley 2, which it's the best.
Can't talk about Haley 2.
Having +2 speed on a caster that's already super awesome.
So, yeah, that's pretty awesome. Irisk 2 is always the one that catches me. I always forget that he has a bond. And his bond is +2 defense, and I believe can't be knocked down. Which, +2 defense on a Khador Jack isn't amazing, but changing from having 4s to hit to having 6s to hit can come up just often enough to be troublesome. For the other 2 bonds that really fall into sort of the amazing camps that I see a lot are actually in hordes. For Hexeris 2, his bonded War Beast can act as an Arc Node. Or Xerxes 2, where he gets to cast the Animus of his bonded War Beast for free.
Oh, lovely, because that's what everybody needs.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought Bradigus was the only one who got that kind of thing. Come on, you guys.
So there is one thing that I wanted to throw out there that causes all kinds of confusions. We were talking about how the basic bond rules say that you can't bond character jacks. And there are a couple of character jacks out there that are specific to certain characters. For example, Beast09 is Sorsha's jack, and they have affinities. And affinities usually have some sort of rule, such as Dynamo's, where it says that while he's in Nemo's control area, he gets to re-roll missed attacks with lightning weapons. And the affinity rule says that they may be bonded to that character. And the one piece that I wanted to throw out there is that doesn't mean that they can automatically get a bond to something that doesn't have one normally. So, for example, Beast09 cannot bond with Sorsha 1 because Sorsha 1 doesn't have a bond. Sorsha 2 does have a bond, and she can bond Beast09 because of the affinity.
Right.
This confuses.
But you need to have the affinity needs to work back to the bond as well, so it needs to go both ways. So that is something that is super confusing to new players. So it says I can bond. That means I get a free bond, right?
No.
No, you do not get a free bond. It means that if you already have a bond, that you can bond with said jack. Mm-hmm. If you're the one named on the jack and you have a bond already. All right, guys, we're going to leave all that behind. It's time to go to our round table for this evening. And tonight's round table is, what is a list dojo and how does I do it? If you go anywhere on the interwebs and you hang out talking with people on the War Machine Hordes interwebs, you will hear the word, I dojoed that, or me and my buddies dojoed this all night, and you may, as a new player, not really understand what a dojo is. Paul, what's a dojo? What's a list dojo?
Okay, so this is a bit of a point of frustration, but I'll go with it. A dojo is a place of practice, and it comes from martial arts, and a dojo is a place where you go to practice. So, what a dojo should be for us nerds in the War Machine community is your local friendly game store or your buddy's basement where you practice all of your games. The way that you're using it is a little different, where you're talking about dojoing as a mental exercise where you go through the hypotheticals and the math of likely combinations, and you create mental scenarios to try and find synergies and evaluate either lists, pairings, casters' choices, these sorts of things.
I think you're absolutely correct. The best way to dojo is to sit down with another person across the table and actually have a battle with a new list. Most of us don't have 2 hours daily to test out whatever list we do. So the reason why it's devolved into, I've devolved it apparently, but apparently, I think the greater.
It's not just you.
The greater world meta has devolved it into, let's just sit around on the car ride home from the game store and talk about how I can beat shit. So let's just say I walk into Wizard's Tower. It's Tuesday. There's nothing going on. I went in to buy a couple models, get my paints, get my 15% discount for being part of the Ottawa Get No War Machine Club. I get my stuff, I buy it, and I show up at the table, and my two buddies are about to leave. Mm-hmm. Well, I don't have time to get a 2-hour game in, but I do have this new list I've been thinking about. So the other side of dojo is, instead of actually testing it at the table, is that we sit down and we talk about said list. And they tell me all the flaws, is the way I like to think of it. Is especially when we do it with people. You can dojo by yourself, but it is a circular. It is as close to masturbation as you want to get. So let's start with, when you dojo, there's two types of lists that you throw down. There's competitive lists versus fun lists. Maelstrom, what is the difference in your mind of a competitive list versus a fun list to dojo?
Well, a fun list is something that you're just kind of throwing out to maybe play in your local game store against a guy, not in a league or tournament, just something to do for fun, test some affinities, maybe see what works, what doesn't. For a competitive list, it's something you want to throw down seriously. Something that you've tried probably at least a couple times.
Yeah, I think that's perfect. And also, I look at it as competitive lists are always to deal with the meta as a whole versus one person. Like, I look at our fun lists like when we go to the pub.
Yep.
And it's just me versus you. I know you're going to throw down Vale. I'm going to throw down Bradigus or whatever. And we're going to have a fun game. And we're just working against each other. Throwing this out to you, PG Sending Me Auto Magic, when you start to dojo lists, or when you start to think about your next list, when you start to build something new, and you don't want to just net deck whatever Master Scorn Player 309 played, where are your resources? Where do you go to start learning about? Or do you just come up with something crazy?
I usually... Now, this is more about list creation than actual dojoing a particular list with someone. I normally start with either an interaction that I want to explore or a model that I think is awesome. It can be, this model is awesomely horrible, or it can be, this model is, blatantly cool, but I never see it played. Let's see how we can see it played. Or there's some kind of awesome interaction. It's like, oh, look, I can, to defeat, this is pre-errata Denny's feat, so I need to beat Denny's feat. How do I do that? Well, Enigma Foundries bring stuff back. Is there a list I can generate that can kill itself and bring itself back in such a way that those things are not affected by the pulse feat, and I can not lose on top of 2?
The resources for that are your friends,
usually,
really.
Well, I usually start with cards. I get a bunch of cards out and I stare at them, and then when that doesn't make any sense, I will fire up Facebook and I will say, "Hey, has anybody ever played this against this?" Or I will, if I know someone who's actually played that faction, I'll call up someone and say, "Hey, what's going on with these two things?"
So, Paul, I want to send this out your way because you have a talent for creating new lists in a faction that's been around forever. Where do you start? Because often you are building. Do you try to not do what somebody else is doing? Is that your first step? What is the net deck versus the special snowflake for you, and how do you get there?
So I do both. It depends on. And it depends on how I'm feeling. And a lot of times what I'll do is I'll start with a net deck. And I'll start going out either onto the PP forums, which have a huge mass of lists that you can go through, or poking around on Discount Games. Discount Games has listings of all of the top 3 placings for tournaments, for major con level tournaments for the last 3 or 4 years. So oftentimes that's a place to start, and you know that the list works, and then you start to tweak things, but in your personal preference. For example, I like Jax, but I play Signar. This has always caused me problems, and so I go from that perspective, and
it sounds like you sort of guide yourself by finding the thing you want to play, looking for other people that play that way competitively, and that helps guide your decisions to a certain degree, and then create your own, fill the niches.
It's a good description. Now, because of my personal predilections, I often find myself going way away from what a lot of competitive people agree with. when I was playing Circle, I played Circle with tons and tons of minions. Often with more minions than I had actual Circle models.
Sounds like you'd be a really good Circle player right now with just 3 units of Croaks. You're good to go.
This admittedly was before Croak Raiders came out, so I did it with Baldur 2 and 2 units of Posse. Mm-hmm. That was good fun. My favorite thing to do is to show up to the game store and put my list out and have Marc-Andre say to me, "What the fuck are you playing?"
I love it. Sending this out to you, PG Semi-Automagic. The first thing you do, because we know that you're a Beast Jack guy, that's the reason why you played Legion, that's the why you played COC. When you look at a new Beast or Jack or whatever, because you often build around that. What is it what sort of, you picked up your new shiny figure, you painted it up, you're super keen on it, you've read the card. What is the next step for you for building your list before you take it to your friends and say, this is what I want to play?
Well, if I'm starting a list from a certain point, there's 2 things you want to do. You either want to support that thing or let it do its work. Those are sort of the 2 different types of lists that you'll get with a when you're building a based on a model or unit list. So I have a Jack, and I want it to hit harder. So the first thing I'm going to do is figure out how to push the bell curve around. So, I want to give it a bonus in strength. So I'll maybe look at a Warcaster or a solo that will give it a strength boost. And then maybe I want to speed it up or make sure it doesn't get stopped. So again, I'll look at solos that might do that. And then I want it to not get removed immediately. So I'll think about what kind of chaffing units or things that I can use to deliver that.
Right, so figure out your delivery.
Yeah, exactly. And what you're doing is you're building a list around that model. So basically you start with the model and then you add modules until that model can do the thing you want it to do.
And I think that also is circumscribed to units, the exact same thing.
You can pick a unit and do the same thing.
And I think that is very evident with things, something like a Croak Raider where you're excited about using, or whatever, it can be any unit. You just bought a brand new unit, you were excited to use it.
Hex Hunters?
So the Hex Hunters.
So Hex Hunters is the same thing. I've got these Hex Hunters, I really want to play with them. Yep. How do I make them do what they want to do? I either have to deliver them or I have to support them.
So the opposite, or not the opposite, but the corollary to that is the sort of get out of the way list build. So I know that I have this thing that can operate on its own and kill all the things. An avatar, say. Nothing's going to be able to help that because it's spell warded and all that kind of stuff. So what I want to do is I want to build the rest of the list so that it can handle itself with those points missing. So if I'm going to scrape 13 to 15 points off of the top of a list for this awesome Jack that I want to play, I'm going to have to build a list that the rest of the list is actually sort of self-sufficient. I've got a caster and some infantry that work together well. And I've got some solos that make sure that the Jack I have isn't going to get stuck on an incorporeal unit or something that it can't get through.
Yep.
And then I just let this guy do his work over here, and then I have the rest of this army that plays more tightly together.
I think a more apt description is that's what we do with Warcasters a lot of times. Some Warcasters need to be focus lean. Some Warcasters have a lot of focuses spread around. Some are Warjack. You'll hear this thrown around, the Warjack caster versus the focus hog caster, so to speak. And I think that's also another way that you go about it too. So you don't run to Kane 2 with a Jack that's going to need 3 focus every round to make it work.
It is a little bit different starting with a Warcaster or Warlock, but you can definitely do the same trick. Sometimes it's how to deliver Butcher, and sometimes it's what can I do with this Assyria to everything else.
Right. So, Paul, I'm going to send this out your way because I think this is a better question when you're list dojoing. When we sit down to a list dojo, often we're doing one of two things. We're either going to ask a question or answer a problem. I think that's pretty obvious when we talk about it, that those are the two different types of lists out there. You either have question lists or answer lists. We've talked about that in other podcasts. But how do you deal with problem matchups? Like, let's say you are consistently losing to something and you're a newer player, or just send out some advice to some of the newer players that you get it all the time on the forums. I can't deal with Veil 2. I can't deal with whatever, Lilith 2. How do you deal with a problem matchup? What is it that you look at in your lists to deal with it?
It's hard. It's a hard question to answer without going into specifics. So let's go into some specifics.
Exactly. That'd be fun.
I was at Captain Con a couple of weeks ago, and just walking through the hall, you were able to tell a lot of what's showing up in the meta there, and a lot of what was showing up in the meta was a lot of Legion with Lilith 2, and a lot of Retribution with Raven. And so you had to be able to deal with ranged skews, as it were, and you had to be able to deal with it from the point of view of something that was ignoring a lot of your basic ranged protections. You couldn't use line of sight blocking, so you couldn't just hide behind a colossal. You couldn't trust the terrain because forests weren't going to help you. So in looking at that, I was chatting with Marc-Andre, who was going on into Masters, and the way that was solved from a Signar perspective was the application of a higher armor value caster. In this case, it was Darius, with the addition of shield guards, which are the Sentinels, and you saw this repeated throughout a lot of the Signar players, and they solved it in very similar ways. I saw another Signar player who was playing Cray with he had 4 Sentinels, and that was his Legion drop, because he knew that he was going to get Lilith 2, and the best way that he could figure out to solve for the ranged problem was, I'm just going to spread the damage out as much as possible. If he focuses on killing the Sentinels, he's not focusing on killing my important pieces. If he focus fires on my caster or my Stormwall, I'm going to shield guard as much as possible, and it's going to spread out the damage. And this game is very much a rock, paper, scissors. Everything has counters. And so it's a matter of understanding what is coming at you and what is going to be problematic. It is hard to be 100% sure of what you are going to be encountering, and it is hard to create a perfect pairing. And in fact, it's in 2-list pairing, I believe it is impossible to create a 100% cover for what you're going to be seeing. And so you create the best possible matchups that you can. If you know that, low power shooting is huge in your meta, then you solve it with throwing armor at it.
Right. Yeah, I mean, basically, I think that's perfect. You went to a competition, you had a chance to see what you were going to skew with. You then sat there and dojoed with another good player who played the same faction as you, a solution, which is a hilarious solution, which you would love.
Oh, yeah.
They threw Darius down.
Darius is my buddy.
Which is great. But this is a perfect example of a dojo, to me. Two great players sitting down, or two players at the same level going, how the hell do we solve this problem? There's a whole shitload of little two out here. Let's figure it out. I don't think you can come up with a better concept, and I think we all dojo our local meta. Mm-hmm. I think we all we know what we're going to see in our Almont meta, so to speak. We know exactly what it is. So you're going to eventually start to counter said thing. So let's just say, for example, you're going to be facing George's COC Axis tier list because he's been practicing it to take. What do you start to do as your counter? And so you and I'll dojo quickly. So what are you thinking?
Well, we need something to remove a lot of models quickly.
Yep. And you want it to be removed from play.
Yeah.
Do you have something that does that with Legion?
We do it with Scythians.
So
Scythians do that.
Some Scythians?
Yeah, which they have Bloodbath, which is fantastic. So they can just... The two initials hit, and they get free melee attack against everything
who's your
within their
caster?
2-inch range. Against Axis, I like Saren, and I like Lilith too.
Well, everybody likes Lilith too.
Yeah.
You're a freaking Legion caster.
Yeah.
So what do you do to support? What's going to make those two Sarens sing? What's going to make the two Scythians sing? Sorry. Think hard, Maelstrom. I'm a mean individual. What do you think? You're a Legion.
Well, I'm worried about the Scythians. I would probably only bring one of them to get the Bloodbath because their Bloodbath, to get the RFP because their Bloodbath isn't going to go off because there's so much little stuff that he's going to kill whatever he hits and he's never going to get off the spin that he gets on everybody else. I'd be more likely to go with lots of AoEs for getting rid of stuff, and if there's something that that faction can do, it's lots of AoEs. I might, as a weird outside thing, I might think about a tower, the battle engine. The reason for that would be the 4-inch reach.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Quite often, I have to have, when I'm playing my access list, I have to have my resurrection guys relatively close to the front so that they can catch the guys that have tried to go deep. And if you can get a tower to that 4-inch reach, well, you can see a large base right over all those small base guys, and you can do a lot of damage with a tower that has all those souls to feed on.
Well, what's wrong with throwing a Ravagore in there so that you can also...
Oh, yeah, no, I'm not saying not to bring a Ravagore.
AoE long-range POW 14s? God.
Yeah, well, the problem is you're only going to kill one guy. It's much better. It's much better for the fire.
Yeah,
because the POW 7 aren't they 15?
15.
Yeah, so yeah. Right.
So the POW 8s
Paul, throw it in if you find any holes in this entire
are going to be good. But what's much better is to set 5 guys on fire and have them all take a POW 12 because that's only dice -2.
Blightbringer has a 5-inch AoE to drop down there at 14.
There you go.
Yeah.
Blightbringer, 2 Ravagores, Lilith 2.
It's deadly.
That's going to cause a lot of problems.
Ladies and gentlemen, that there was a dojo that just happened. So, all right, we're going to leave the dojo behind. We are going to move into some audience questions for this evening. I think we covered them all tonight. We talked about the concept of the Jack Marshall a little bit. We talked a bit about the bonds a little bit, which is another audience question, and we talked a bit about being nice to all the other people in your meta.
One quick question that we had was, how do you not dojo for your meta? So the natural tendency will be to
Deal with
Dojo.
what you have.
Yeah. Okay. So you're going to an event. What you think you're going to see at this event is Axis Tier, Karchev with Kador, Terminus.
How wrong you are.
And
and
Bradigus.
And Kruger too.
Or Kruger too. So this is what you think is going to be at the tournament because that's what you see every Monday night. This is probably not what you're going to see at the tournament.
Well, you might say Kruger too.
Yeah, but you're probably not going to.
show up.
Yeah, exactly. And then you have no circle.
Okay, so let's throw that to Paul because he goes to more events.
What happens when? How do you get out of your local mindset?
How do you get out of your local mindset, Paul?
For me, the big thing is at that point. If I'm going somewhere where I don't know what I'm going to be seeing, I change up the type of pairing that I will have, because for all of its size, Ottawa's meta can be relatively small, and so I have a general idea if I go out to Wizard's Tower what I'm going to see, and so I ask questions that I know that are going to be hard, or I try to answer the questions that I know that they are going to ask. But if I'm going somewhere that I don't know as well, I change out from hard, a lot of the harder skew lists into more generalist answer lists. So it's more of an all-comers idea. Or I simply go with a list that I am super, super comfortable with. And for me, that's usually Cray, who's a caster that I can literally play in my sleep.
Yeah, I think that's... Yeah, play something you're comfortable with is not a bad piece of advice.
I think that might be the secret to tournaments. I know... There's a lot of... we put a lot of stock in having the right list, doing the right list chicken, thinking ahead for your meta and all that stuff. I would posit that for everybody who is not going to a major convention, the most important thing would be to have played your list 30 times before it goes into the tournament.
Mm.
Because... if you can do that list almost on muscle memory, you have all the cycles in the world to think about strategy, and you don't have to think about, God, what was the speed of this thing?
Yeah.
Well, we all make the same mistake. We go to our first tournament, we're like, screw it. I'm going to play. This will be the only time I've ever played Bradigus. And what I'm going to do this time, because I heard it's good. Oh, I can't believe I lost. I don't know why that happened.
I absolutely agree. I will put money on the guy that brings Nemo 1 to a tournament, having played him 150 times, over the guy that brings Gatsby 2, having never played him before.
Exactly. And I don't know what kind of idiot would do that every time he goes to a tournament, like rethink everything he does kind of the night before and to take an entirely different list. That would be stupid.
Some people like to make their list in the car on the way there.
So, hey, I may have done that. Shut up! All right. It's time for the lightning round. It's time for the lightning round, ladies and gentlemen. 10 of the most difficult questions in War Machine and Hordes. This is Paul's first time at the lightning round. I expect him to do well because he's Paul. He's amazing. All right, so Paul, the way that this works is if you think you know the answer, you have to buzz in. Most of the time, these guys just buzz in because they want to answer it first. So don't be afraid to hit the buzzer. To hit the buzzer is all you have to go is make the noise. If you make the noise first, I will let you answer the question first. I'll usually sometimes, if I feel like it, give 2 chances. And the points really don't matter. I just choose a winner at the end. All right. Question number 1. How do you break a jack bond? George.
Jack's gotta die.
If the jack dies...
Or RFP.
Or removed from play, yes. Very good. I even had that written down. Question number 2. What is the speed of a Grey Lord Outrider?
9.
It is 9, Maelstrom. Very good. That is 1
Good
point.
light
from-
cav guess.
All
Yeah.
right.
That sounds like
Light
Lake
Cab
Cab. I'm
guess.
going to go with 9.
Okay. Can you arc a spell on an engaged arc node? No, you cannot. You should know this because your wife has been doing it to you all week.
Yep. Never again.
Question number 4. What are the 2 icon powers on a grotesque banshee?
Not used and never seen it before.
I put this there just so that you'd be like, it's a garbage miniature. You should never play it. You just made
Give it
Will
time.
cry. Fearless and Gunfighter. All right.
Really? Gunfighter?
Yeah, he's got Gunfighter. They're pretty badass.
Damn.
They should be used, maybe.
Damn.
Question number 5. How many bonus fury does a bonded war beast get? Paul.
Doesn't get any,
He doesn't get any.
get
Very
any
good.
bonus
Trick
fury.
question.
Paul is on the trick questions for tonight. Question number 6. What is the height, the full height occupation of a huge based model? How much height does it have?
Oh, of a huge base model.
Huge base model. We've talked about the other ones, but we
Yeah.
haven't talked about huge base.
We haven't talked about huge base.
It's actually in the rules. Well, how much space do they occupy? Give it.
I'm gonna say it's unlimited.
It is 5 inches.
It's only 5
It
inches.
is only
Jesus.
5 inches.
So theoretically, they could hide behind a 5-inch tall house.
They could hide behind a 5-inch tall head.
That's
seems-
very
According
interesting.
to what I read today, 5 inches. Question number 7. What does a Cephalix caster control? Paul.
Monstrosities.
It is monstrosities, 2 for Paul. Question number 8. What is the penalty for having a crippled body? Paul.
It's -1 die to all damage rolls.
It is 1 minus 1. Oh, he's starting to he's lapping you guys now. Question number 9. What is the range of damn it.
You're writing?
Every week.
It's an Ardus Sentinels.
Eridus Sentinel.
That's it. Ardus. I didn't know. My writing's fine. I can't pronounce it. Ardus Sentinels Venom Blaster.
It's 10.
It is 10 inches. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, wait, I need my iPad because the answer to the Minty Fresh question is really long. So this should be really good. I just need to open this up really, really quickly. Here we go.
This makes great television.
It makes really good television and radio all at the same time.
Yeah, we can fuck up multiple mediums. Like you wouldn't believe.
Nobody's business.
All right. Which War Machine factions had the bond heightened?
12, Bilac? 12?
Which War Machine
Really?
factions had the bond heightened awareness in Mark 1, and what did it do?
What factions had heightened awareness?
And
In
what did
Mark
it do?
1, and what did it do?
It was War Machine factions?
Paul's
you
just
said?
shaking his head, yeah.
War Machine factions?
War
Said
Machine factions.
Mark 1's before my time.
Yeah, it's before all of our time.
Yeah.
But I'll make a guess.
Okay, you're in. You're in for the count.
I'm in.
I'm taking
Okay.
away all your points if you get it wrong.
Oh, what? I didn't know this was all or nothing. Come on.
It's making the Minty Fresh question harder.
So heightened awareness, I'm going to say, well, it's not Rhett because they basically weren't out in Mark 1. So I'm going to say Crix and Signar?
It was Crix and Signar. I'm going to give you 5 points for getting that.
Okay, and...
What it was, I'll give you 5 extra points, and I won't give Paul the win. If you can answer
If I can come up with what it actually...
what did it do?
Heightened awareness, was this on a Warcaster or is this...
It's on a Warjack. It's a bond.
It's a bond. I'm going to say... it's like Long Leash now. It gives them double the control area.
No, the Warjack may change its facing at the start. I just spit all over my iPad screen because I drank a beer before this. The Warjack may change its facing at the start of its activation before moving or declaring a charge or slam against the target.
Ooh, I like it.
There you go.
Isn't that... I want to think that's an animus on somebody now.
I'm sure there's a couple of different powers to do it. Okay, guys, that was a really good cast. I had a really good time tonight, and it might be the third beer. Paul, I want to thank you very much for showing up tonight. It was really great having you on the cast, even with all of the technical difficulties to start. I hope you come back. And keep on dojoing, dude. Keep on dojoing.
Anytime. You know where to find me if you want questions answered.
Yeah, the Signar page. I just go calling Paul. Calling Paul Campbell. Need answer to all your cray questions.
That was kind of fun. That was the first time I was ever forum summoned.
If anybody's going to answer a cray question, it's going to be you. Okay, so PG Semi-Auto Magic, what events do we have coming up?
I think the next big event is King Con. We have the first of the Omega series coming up either right before or right after King Con. That's going to be a 35-point fun tournament. No clocks, no nothing. Just come out and have a lot of fun. What's starting even sooner than that are our leagues. The first of the platoon leagues are coming up real soon here. I think, let's see.
God,
I think it's like Monday or
Well, the
something.
official start was this week. So
Yeah, the
we're
official
not
start
that
was this
far
week, but we locally aren't starting till I think I want to say the 6th, which
you
is
can't have
either
your
be
approach.
Sunday or Monday. And that will be awesome.
Cool. And I think other than that, we need to give a shout out to our sponsor, Wizards Tower. I like to do this at the end of the episode. They have been so great to us, letting us cast from their facility whenever we want. They now sponsor the podcast. They are online if you play Magic the Gathering or War Machine and Hordes, and you are looking for a place to get your models in Canada for a decent price from a small store.
Yep.
A small store that carries pretty much one of everything.
Yeah, they 10-to-1 stock, which is awesome.
Yeah, do us a favor, go there first. I know that there's some bigger stores, but I mean, we're talking about, 5 or 6 guys that we know versus a conglomerate of people that we don't. Go there, get your figures there. They will do right by you. So check out Wizards Tower, wizardstower.com. That's it for tonight. I can't think of anything else that we need to talk about. And apparently it's Balak's birthday on the 6th. So don't forget about Mike Balak's birthday.
We won't forget Mike.
And we want to say good luck to all of the guys going to the OTC.
Unfortunately,
it's not local here, so I didn't want to particularly mention it in the local stuff, but I think Ottawa's got 2 teams going.
2 teams.
Nice.
Yeah.
And it should be awesome. So
be
good luck, all
amazing.
you guys.
And I believe it's going to get streamed to a certain extent.
I think so, yeah.
By
We'll
not
be-
us. But we will restream
We
it.
will restream it.
Oh, yeah, we will be hosting that.
All right,
Make sure you
ladies and
visit
gentlemen,
that page.
dice down. Dice down! Moose Machine and This Death Clock Has 60 Minutes is a proud part of the Muse on Minis network. Podcasts go online every Thursday morning. You can watch the show live every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern on Twitch and keep in touch with us on our Facebook page. Just Google Moose Machine. If you can't find us, you're doing the internet wrong.